Hi, my name is Toby. I'm from the International Association for Political Science Students, and I'm live right now here from San Francisco at the annual convention of the International Studies Association. And I'm here today with Maria Gwynn, and I'm very happy that I can have the opportunity to talk to her today. And Maria, nice to have you here. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, hello, and I am delighted to be here, and I'm very happy to be sharing with all of you the ISA conference. My name is Maria Gwynn. I am from Paraguay, and I am currently a Global Leaders Fellow at the University of Oxford. My areas of research are international law and international relations. And within that, I analyze the concept of power. And that is what brings me to San Francisco and to the ISA. I analyze power and structural power in particular.
Mm-hmm. Before we talk about your research project that you want to present here in San Francisco, I want to hear a bit more about you and your career, how you got interested in the topic that you're interested in. You've studied in Paraguay, the UK, in Germany, and now you're in the US as well. Has this broad experience of studying in different countries and different parts of the world also contributed to your interest in structural power and in your research?
Yes, definitely. I think I sometimes consider myself as a global citizen because I did my undergraduate degree in Paraguay, my master's degree in the UK, in Oxford, my PhD in Germany, and then visiting academic positions also in the US, and now postdoctoral positions also in the US, in Princeton. So I think this gives you not only a very broad perspective, but it also makes you realize that you have different cultures that are also participating in the intellectual framework of your work. Yes.
Before I go on and ask my next question, I also want to tell all our followers at home that you are, of course, invited also to ask your questions. If you have any, please feel free to write a comment, ask your question, or your critique in the comment bar, and we will discuss it. So you've just told me a bit about your career and all the different stages that you went through. How exactly did you get interest in structural power?
Well, to be honest, I think I did not do a very direct linear career in the academics. So I did a lot of academic work, but at the same time, I also took some years for practicing international law, for example. So I think this gave me also a very realistic perspective on how to look at things, because in practice you have situations, you look at treaties, you look at international framework, and then you really see how things work in practice. And then if there are problems, of course you theorize and you think about them, and I think that's it was very useful for me, because when I was working, for example, in an international law firm, I saw some problems, for example, with certain treaties, and then I wanted to explore more. So it's actually the interest of finding things out or researching a little bit more on things that then put me back on the academic track.
Which kind of treaties are you talking about?
For example, bilateral investment treaties. During my PhD, and I analyzed a lot of that, and especially I considered the South American experience. So my whole case studies were on South America, and I was looking at different paradoxes that resulted from that. For example, in the history, why did, for example, South American countries agree something at the multilateral level, which was beneficial for them, and then they switched to agreeing the complete opposite rules in an international treaty that were the bilateral investment treaties. And while there are some scholars that were saying that it's just because they didn't know what they were doing, this is why I think structural power is very important, because you don't only have to look at bargains, what happens between two parties, just how they bargain something. You also have to consider the structural framework in which these bargains are taking place. So to really understand that, you have to look not only about to what two countries are doing, you have to look at different dimensions. What is happening, for example, in the financial dimension, security dimension, in other aspects that can influence what they agree on. And I think that's a better explanation of these paradoxical behaviors.
So is your current research more on the bilateral dimension or more on the multilateral dimension? What are you more interested in right now?
In both of them. I think you have to look at both levels to really understand what is happening. My current research is I really analyze the concept of power and structural power in particular. And I will tell you why. It's more a theoretical aspect of it. Because if we think of power and the traditional conceptions of power, you have that, for example, the very classic definition of power. A has power over B to the extent that he can make B do something that he would otherwise not do. So if you think actors and power, you definitely have a relational aspect of power between the two. But if you remember Lux is saying that this is only one dimension of power. You can have a second dimension of power where, for example, you have agenda setting scenarios, or you can have a third dimension of power in which you can actually shape and form the value of actors. So that's the part that actually escapes just the bilateral relation, the relational aspect. So that's what makes me interested into analyzing a little bit further structural power. And in international relations, there were many academics that have pointed out how structural factors are actually conditioning the behavior of actors. So it's a concept that it has been there. What I'm trying to do is to develop a little bit further, clarifying what is a structure, what are the traditional conceptions of structure, how can we see structure. And the way I see it is that before you think, for example, of structures that derive from resources and capabilities of actors, and that form the structures, but then those structures just reflect those capabilities, and they're only beneficial for some actors. On the other hand, if you think of structures as sources of power itself, because they are entities in their own right, then they are not just derived from resources of capabilities. These structures can actually generate capabilities for more than one actor. And if you think in the examples of developing countries, for example, countries that have absolutely no bargaining power, and you see how they use these structures, institutional and legal structures, you can see how these structures generate capabilities to them. For example, in a UN setting, they use these to form alliances and to have their preferences over these alliances. If those structures were not there, they wouldn't be able to do this. And the same thing with legal structure and international law in particular.
The research that you are doing right now, is it more focusing on these theoretical dimensions, or are you right now at a stage where you're testing these different concepts or going into case studies and trying to test empirically these different approaches?
Yes, a little bit of both. So I'm doing the whole theory and really getting into the theoretical aspect of this. And I think it's fascinating and really engaging into the concept of power, which in itself is a very political debated concept, right? So that is fascinating in itself. And then, of course, I'm testing in real examples in world politics, how these situations have been applied.
Which ones? Ways. Which examples?
There are many. So I'm classifying in different areas because you have to actually look at different issue areas, and then you see many examples that can happen. You can have examples in the finance domain, security, production, knowledge, and also how the institutional and legal structures work in those regards.
Mm-hmm. And you have recently concentrated on, like when you analyze treaties, on treaties in Latin America, right? Which treaties are most interesting to you in Latin America when it comes to your research?
Well, bilateral investment treaties were also for a long time very interesting to me, and especially because of having the international investment framework has developments not only in bilateral settings but also in multilateral settings. So how the two combined are very interesting. But currently I am analyzing the upcoming renegotiation of the most important energy treaty in the South American region. It's going to be renegotiated for the first time in 50 years. So I'm doing the whole academic background on this analysis. First, to see what happened in history. So the treaty was first ratified and signed in the 70s. And it has some restrictive conditions for one of the countries. So I'm using these theories, and that's the connection with structural power, to actually understand why a country would sign a treaty that might have some restriction for itself. And to understand that in history can be a very good lesson to what will happen in a future renegotiation.
If you look on these treaties that Latin American countries do with each other, do you only look at these countries itself as actors, or do you, for example, also look at other countries that are maybe not involved in making this treaty, but may also have a certain effect on these countries?
Yes, I'm trying to be very sensitive to all actors, and that's why I refer to just actors in the international system, because as you may well know, we're not talking just about states. They are the most important actors in the international system, but you can have non-state actors that are very relevant for this. Not only other countries, you can have corporations, you can have NGOs that are very active, you can have the civil society, and in this in these ideas of structural power and the analysis I'm doing, I'm very sensitive to having a very pluralistic view by including all of these actors and see what is happening.
So we've talked now about your research that you're doing right now a lot. Can you tell us a bit more about your role right now here at the ISA conference? Because this is the first day today of the annual convention. Can you tell our audience a bit, what is the ISA annual convention, and what is your role here? What are you presenting or discussing?
Well, the ISA convention, the main topic of the ISA this year is the rules of power and the power of rules. So as a scholar researching of power, of course, this was my main motivation to come here. And I will be discussing in a round table with some of the most prominent scholars that have been working on structural power. And I think what it's amazing about a conference like the ISA is how many people it draws onto, right? So there are people from all over the world, every background, so many different universities, and just to have them everybody connected through through this forum where you can share your ideas, you can debate, you can discuss. I think that makes it like a unique forum to actually put your ideas to test or share them.
Yeah. Thank you very much for being here with us today. I think I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm very glad that you joined us, and our followers are as well, as I can see right now from the reactions. I wish you a lot of fun here at the ISA convention, and
thank you.
Hopefully we see each other next year.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And to all of you, if you want to take a message about structural power, think what we see with structural power. We can see with structural power that not only two partners are dancing, but we can also see that these partners are dancing in a very well prepared stage that ensures that only certain steps in the dance are possible. So with that very colloquial example on structural power, I think you can have an idea why is it important to keep in mind the relevance of structural power in international relations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.